that's how we heard about Pete. Pete Larson is the co-founder and director of Family Fest Ministries, which strives to strengthen families and marriages through a variety of retreats and programs, such as the Winter Weekend and Summer Splash Family Camps and the Marriage Booster Retreat. Prior to starting Family Fest, Pete served as the youth and family minister at St. Patrick's Church in Edina and was on the staff of Youth Frontiers, leading over 600 retreats for 5th through 12th grade students. He was also a host of the Wishing Well TV show at the Minneapolis and St. Paul Children's Hospitals. Pete often speaks at church youth groups, conferences, and retreats. He is a contributing blogger at 1corinthians13parenting.com. He lives in Bloomington with his wife Lynn and their sons Dan and Tim, who are 24 and 19. In his free time, he enjoys running, playing guitar and mandolin, traveling, fishing, and woodworking. And lastly, when he was younger, he thought he was Batman.
Thank you. Okay, can you hear me? Am I on? All right. Very good. Well, it is good to be with you all today. I'm excited to spend some time with you. Thanks for the introduction. And this is great to be here with you today. As was mentioned in the little introduction, so one of the things that I get to do a lot is we started this ministry called Family Fest, leading family retreats. So we do 3 retreats a year, 2 in the wintertime, long weekends up at Grandview Lodge, and then we do 1 summer family camp. And as part of that, one year when we were doing the family retreats, some of the couples that I was visiting one night with said, you know, it'd be great to do this retreat with just couples, where we don't have our kids around, so we can focus on our own relationships. And I said, well, that would be great. So we started thinking about how we would do it, and I decided that a whole weekend was going to be too tough. So we developed this 1-day, 7-hour marriage booster retreat. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a 7-hour retreat in 45 minutes. So buckle up, here we go. Oh man, this is going to be fun. No, I'm excited to be here with you. I love doing this. I love what Moss is doing, and I love the mentors that are here. What are the mentors? Raise your hand. Let's give them a big hand. People who have been through it before, and you know, hopefully today I'll be able to share some of the things that I've learned as a parent and as a husband, and maybe some of these things will be good for you. On your tables, there's a little sheet. If you can, somebody could hold that up, just as nuggets and notes. I just put that out there. If you want to just write anything down, then you have something for when you leave. All right, let's get started. So a few weeks ago, I was with some friends, and we were playing some games, hanging out a little bit, and when after we were kind of done playing, I don't know, somehow we got started talking about first dates. And somebody was sharing about their first date in junior high, and you know, we started sharing these different stories. And one of my friends shared this story, I love it. She said she had gotten set up on a blind date, and she went on this blind date. She got to this coffee shop where they were going to meet, and she sat down. There was nobody else in the coffee shop. She was sitting there for a while and waiting, and after about 20 minutes, she started thinking, okay, is this a no-show? And so she kept waiting, and after about 45 minutes, she said, okay, that's it, I'm not waiting anymore. So she got up and left the coffee shop. She was driving home. She said she was so angry that this guy would blow her off. I mean, how do you not show up on a blind date, a first date? I mean, you said you'd come. So she gets home, and she's going to send this email to him, you know, just kind of laying into him a little bit. So she pulls up the email. She sees the thread of the different emails, and when she looks at the email, she realized she went to the wrong coffee shop. So she quickly jumped back in her car, and when she drove there, he was still there. So I had to share one of my first dates. I was thinking about this. So when I was in college, there was this girl that I had seen around, and some of my friends kind of knew her, and I thought she was really cute. So I thought, I'm gonna get the courage up to ask her out. So I see her one day, and I walk up to her, and I kind of say hi, and I think we had met a couple of times before. I didn't know if she knew me, and I said, hey, would you ever want to go out? And she goes, with you? Well, yeah, kind of, yeah, I was thinking that. And she goes, oh, okay, I guess. And so we started playing and doing something, and then I heard that this musician was coming to town in the Twin Cities. We were up at college, and I said, hey, would you want to see if should I get tickets for that? She said, oh, that'd be really cool. And so I get tickets for this concert. We come home for the weekend to go to the concert, and I pick her up, and we get in the car. We're driving downtown Minneapolis for this concert. And I started making small talk, just trying to get to know her a little bit. And I said, how are you doing? She said, fine. I said, did you have a good weekend? Yes. Did you do anything special? No. Every single thing I asked were these one-word responses. And so I tried to ask more questions. I was trying to ask these, leading questions, but I got nothing. I was like, oh, this is just really bad. And so we get to downtown, and we're driving around because I was too cheap to park in a parking ramp. So I said, we're going to look for a spot on the street. I said, let me know if you see something. So we're driving around, and I could tell she was kind of getting a little anxious, and I could just sort of feel it. And all of a sudden, I heard her say something, and I thought she had found the spot. I said, did you just see a spot? And before she could say anything or do anything, she began to projectile vomit all over the car. It was on the windshield, it was on the dash, it was on me, it was on her. It was everywhere. It was like, no wonder why she wasn't talking. So I'm like, oh my goodness, what do you do? So I try to find a gas station, like, what do we do? I'm kind of thinking, there are no gas stations in downtown Minneapolis. There's nothing. And so I started driving in the outskirts of downtown Minneapolis. And now we're in some neighborhoods that are probably not that good. And we pull into this kind of dreary Clark gas station. And she goes, is this safe? I looked at the few call over us. I said, nobody's messing with us. We'll be fine. So she goes into the bathroom. She gets herself cleaned up, and now I've got the task of cleaning the car. I'm like, oh no. And it was the middle of winter, so we're driving down, the windows are down, we're freezing, and I'm thinking, how do I do this? So I start grabbing the paper towels from there, and I'm wiping up as much as I can, but it's not doing much. And then I'm thinking, okay, what do I do? So I grab the windshield fluid in my truck, and I start pouring it all over. Now it's diluted a little bit, but it's still really good. And then I see the vacuum cleaner they have. I'm like, do I have quarters? And so I grab all my quarters, and I start vacuuming up as much as I can. And I put a bunch of paper towel down on the seats, and I'm like, okay, I think we can make it home. So she comes out of the bathroom finally after about 20 minutes, and I drive home. I don't think she even remembers the drive home. She was so sick. And we get her home, and her parents are like, what's going on? She's sick. So I remember going back to school, and my roommates are like, how's your day? Like, oh man. What I didn't realize is she'd gone back to school, and her roommate said, how was your date? And she said this. She goes, I think I'm going to marry that guy. She thought any guy that would clean up her cute on our first date might be worth holding on to. And we've been married now for 30 years. Yeah. So, this is let's see, that's our second date right there. Well, I thought we got a picture. Yeah, what am I trying to look for? You just up the same marker or what? Well, we kind of do that. I know, it's a little crazy. So this is us on our celebrating our 30th this last summer, so up in Vancouver. So anyway, I can tell you, we are more in love than we were on the day we got married. And that sounds really cute, but it doesn't mean that we have a perfect marriage. Marriage is hard work. We've worked really hard at it. And so today I want to share some things that I think hopefully will help us become better at our marriage. I had some young friends that were getting married, and they went to their pastor, and they were getting ready to all the things that they had to do for the wedding ceremony. And the girl, our friend, asked the pastor, she said this, she said, so when during the ceremony are we actually married? She said, when do we go from two single people to a married couple? She wanted to know when they were actually married. And I love his answer. He looked at me and said, in about 25 years. And he said, marriage is a process of becoming. You'll be legally married, but to really be married, it takes a lot of work and a lot of intentionality. It's more than just a piece of paper. And so what I want to do today is I want to share some things that I hope will give you encouragement. I want to have this morning be a whole-filled marriage for you, day for your marriage. But I also know that some of you right now are probably struggling. And you know what? That's okay. Everybody struggles in their marriage. Every single person. So you're not alone. But there is hope. But today I want to spend a little time talking about what it is that will give us hope in the midst of some of the crises. But first I have to talk about the crisis. So there's a guy named John Gottman. John Gottman's done a ton of research on marriage couples. I see a few that's not. You may have read some of John Gottman's book. He started out doing some really interesting research on facial expressions. He wanted to see if facial expressions were universal. And so, you see somebody smiling in one part of the world, it doesn't mean the same when we smile in another part of the world. And he discovered that there are 165 universal facial expressions. When we see happiness, it looks the same. Disgust looks the same. Anger looks the same. And you can look at pictures from all over the world, and you can identify what they're feeling right then. And so then we started looking at, how does this work in a marriage? How can we identify things as couples are talking with one another just by their facial expressions? And then we started doing more research on behaviors and the way we respond to one another. And what they actually did is they built a love lab. Okay, goodness. So they bought like a B&B on the coast of Washington, this beautiful place, and they invited these couples who said, how would you like to have a free weekend at B&B? And these couples like, that would be great. So there's one caveat. We're going to be there with you, and we're going to be watching you the entire weekend. And so they would have this mirror, and behind the mirror, the researchers were out there, and they would jot notes on what they saw and how the couples interacted. And what they discovered was this. They discovered that after watching couples, forget this, 1 hour, they could determine in about 95% accuracy whether that couple would be married 5 years from now. Isn't that interesting? They said often we could identify in the first 15 minutes. And what they did is they discovered that there were certain things, certain behaviors, certain characteristics, certain ways of expressing themselves to each other, that if they did it in the negative way, these were what he called the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. I call them the 4 poisons to a marriage. And so I'm going to share the 4 poisons with you because I think they're really important to know because they can creep into any marriage if we're not watching for them. All right? So we're going to take a look at the 4 poisons to marriage. Now this is the bad news. This is the tough stuff, okay? So the first thing that they would watch for when they were watching these couples is criticism. Okay? Oh, I'm a little too far. Too quick. You're getting wrong. They watch for criticism. Now, criticism is different than a complaint. We will always have complaints. When somebody doesn't meet a need or an expected desire or an expectation or a desire, we want to have a complaint. Maybe somebody was late or something like that, and you expressed your satisfaction about that. That's a simple complaint. Criticism goes deeper. A criticism is an attack on the person. Okay, let me give you an example. Okay, this is I'll do the complaint first, and then I'll turn it into a criticism. You'll see how the same situation can be one way or the other. So a few weeks ago, my wife Lynn made a nice turkey dinner, and it was great, and then finished up. And so because she cooked that night, I was cleaning, and she told me after dinner, as I was cleaning up, she said, "Hey, I'm going to make turkey soup and turkey tetrazzini later on this week. So you just put the bone in this bag and then put the turkey into a Tupperware thing. I'll have it ready to go." I said, "No problem." And I'm doing my dishes and I'm going at it and get everything done. 2 days later, she calls me in my office and she says, "Hey, I'm just about making dinner here and I can't find the turkey." It's like, honey, how hard is it? It's in the refrigerator, right? And she's like, "I don't see it." I'm like, "I know there's like milk in it and stuff. What?" And I'm like, I was kind of beside myself, like, why? How can she not find a big Tupperware thing in the refrigerator? And so I'm waiting on the phone, and all of a sudden she gets back and she goes, "Oh, I found it." And I'm like, "See?" She goes, "It wasn't in the refrigerator." I'm like, "What?" She goes, "It's still in the oven." I'm like, "Oh, sorry." Now, if that was a simple complaint, she expected me to do something, I would. So my consequence was I had to go to college and pick up a roasted chicken for dinner so she could make the rest of what she had that night. Now, a simple complaint is something I can deal with. It focuses on the problem, it's not about me. Here's the criticism, you ready? She calls me up and she says, she didn't actually do this, but if she did, this is what it would sound like. What is the matter with you? I asked for one simple thing, to take the turkey and put it in Tupperware and put it in the refrigerator. Is that so hard for you? Can your pea-sized brain not even accomplish that? Now you see the difference. That's an attack on the person. And so when John Gottman would see criticism coming out of people, he knew the poison had crept into the marriage. And I often tell parents to be careful when you say this to your child, what's the matter with you? Be careful about that, because that's a criticism that's going deeper than you could ever imagine. So when John Gottman saw criticism, they said, okay, well, that's a problem. The next one is contempt. Contempt is a little bit deeper than criticism. This comes in the form of long simmering negative thoughts about a person, where you just start thinking about that person always in a negative way. It comes out in the forms of sarcasm and cynicism and mockery, rolling in the eyes, just in the attitude and in the way you are around somebody. Sometimes even in misguided humor. The husband says, I don't know, I'm going to paint the house this summer. Oh yeah, right, you're going to paint the house? Call Channel 5 News, this is huge. You don't know anything. You see, that's contempt. And sometimes it gets so bad that we just start seeing people in a negative way all the time. Even when somebody tries to do something positive, John Gottman calls it a negative sentiment override, where even the positive things come off as negatives. Oh, flowers, what did you do now? You see, that's contempt. Okay, the next one is defensiveness. Okay? We all blow up at times. We say things we probably shouldn't have said, or we didn't say something, or we were late, or whatever happens. And rather than owning our stuff, we become defensive. Hey, it's not my fault. Why are you always put the blame on me? Don't you ever do that? Of course you do. I had a friend, he actually said this to his wife. He said, it's not my fault that I ran over Jenny's bike. You moved the mirrors in my car. Really? Okay. So we talk about that. But when we become defensive, we don't own our own stuff. It becomes about blame. It becomes about winning more than solving the problem. And so if we're becoming defensive, we're not about problem solving. All right? And then the last one is withdrawal. When couples have so much criticism and contempt and defensiveness, they tend to withdraw from each other. First in little ways. They find things that they just get busy at. Maybe she stays longer at work. He's out tinkering in the garage more. Or maybe one of them's coaching their other daughter's team now too, so they're so busy. And I've even seen couples do this where they get so busy at church. Well, I've got another meeting at church. I'm going to be gone tonight. And it's because they're quietly withdrawing from each other. They don't talk as much. They don't have those intimate conversations. And so they separate and become withdrawn from each other. And then at some point they think, we're so far separated from each other now, maybe we're just supposed to be divorced. Now, when you look at this stuff, these poisons, and like I said, they can creep into a relationship at any time. And we all have a little bit of those. That's not the way God intended our marriages to be. God said, love one another as I have loved you. Love unconditionally. What a beautiful thing that is. I don't think I really understood unconditional love when I first got married. Lynn and I were working at a church, and we had taken kids on a mission trip, and we went out to Appalachia. We were in the back hollers of Kentucky, and we were working in a house owned by Ernest and Maggie. Now, you got to picture Ernest and Maggie. They were probably about 80 years old, but they looked like they were 120. I mean, life was hard for them. Maggie looked like Granny from the Beverly Hillbillies, to be honest with you. If you remember that show, she was so sweet. And I remember talking to Ernest one day. We're sitting on his front porch, and he's in his rocking chair whittling. And I said, so Ernest, I've been married for just about a year. I said, what's the secret? And he said, laugh often, love much. That was it, which was the title of this talk. And I've always remembered that, laugh often, love much. But I actually saw the love that Ernest and Maggie had in some amazing ways. So the week we were there was the hottest week of the summer. It was just cooking. And we were putting on a roof on their house. And it was just unbelievable. I don't know if anybody's ever done any roofing. It's hard, hot work, especially when it's 100 degrees. And so the very last day, I had this idea. I thought, I'm going to get a little surprise for the kids. So when we were in the store getting ice and pop and water for the day, I saw these ice cream bars in the freezer section next to the ice. And I thought, oh, wouldn't that be awesome to pull out at lunch? So I secretly bought all these ice cream bars, and I put them in the cooler when the kids went looking. We looked at Maggie's house. I said, Maggie, you got to help me. I said, when lunch comes, after lunch, bring these up. She's like, okay. Runs over there, puts them away. So at lunchtime, she brings out the ice cream bars, and the kids are ecstatic. They're so excited. And we start eating the ice cream bars, but they're melting faster than we can eat them. So then the kids have to chew them all down as fast as they can. And we had enough or two for everybody, so they didn't care. And then we look over at Ernest, and Ernest is sitting in his rocking chair. He's not biting his ice cream bar. He's slowly enjoying his ice cream bar. He's licking it, just loving it. And at first I noticed the ice cream dripping on his hand. And it's kind of running down his wrist and all the way down to his elbow. And it was dripping off his elbow onto his pants. And then it starts coming down his chin, and his whole t-shirt is all covered in chocolate ice cream. And the kids are just kind of watching this, sort of laughing. They're not sure, kind of like, trying to get my hands on what to do. But he just keeps enjoying. And he finally, at some point, he looked down and he saw the chocolate ice cream all over himself. And he turns to Maggie, they've been married for like 60 plus years, and he said something that I'll never forget. He looks at Maggie and he goes, Maggie, give me your teeth. And we just went, did he just say give me your teeth? And we're like, the kids are laughing so hard, they start rolling off the front porch. And Maggie's like, I'm not giving you my teeth. She goes, go get your own teeth. He goes, I'm really. And I thought to myself, that is unconditional love. So just start sharing your teeth with somebody else. Man, I didn't realize that that's the kind of love that I want. She says, you will never get my teeth. Oh, man. But Ernest and Maggie, they had this great love for each other over 60 years, and it was just classic. It was a classic kind of love. And I knew that was the kind of love that God wants us to have. And so God knew that these poisons could enter in our relationship, so He gives us an antidote to the poisons, all right? So let's do that. That was the bad news for today. That is the good news. So you don't need to cry. These are the antidotes to the poison. The antidote to criticism is encouragement. It's encouragement. Hey, life is tough, isn't it? Sometimes everything just is a hard thing. We all need encouragement. And we especially need it from our spouse. And our spouses need encouragement for us. I don't know if any of you ever maybe played on a sport, or maybe you have kids old enough that are in sports now. I remember my kids playing sports, and we had coaches who were criticizers. I remember my son one time, he was playing white hockey, and he comes off the rink with his coaches in his face like, what are you doing? We just worked on this. Come on. Give me the program. My son's over there going, I'm 8. You know, he didn't know. Fortunately, most of our coaches were encouragers. They were these great coaches as my kids would come off the field or off the court. They'd go, hey, great job out there. Oh, I love seeing what you're doing out there, man. You're working so hard. You're a superstar. And my kids go, yeah. We all need that. We need that encouragement. And encouragement has power that we don't always understand. I'll give you an example. So one of my sons, when he was about 8 years old, came up to me. And it was right before Mother's Day. And every Mother's Day, my wife and I would go and do this thing called the Race for the Cure. Some of you are probably familiar with it. And so I would usually run the race, the 5K race. My wife and our sister and her mom would do the walk, which was about an hour after that. And so my son comes up to me and says, hey, Dad, are you going to run that race? I said, well, yeah, I'm going to do that again. He said, could I do it with you? And I said, are you talking about the little one running around the cones in the parking lot? Like last year? He said, no, I want to run the big race with you. Like, okay, maybe you should ask your mom. So we went over and I said, what do you think? And Lynn's like, I don't think it's a very good idea.
He's just a kid. I said, well, let's give it a try. Why not? He wants to do it. So I said, okay, Dan, let's do it. And so we show up at the race. It's a little before 8 a.m. And there's about 2,000 runners back then. And I look around like, okay, there are no other kids out here. It's all adults. There's a few high school kids. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe this was not such a great idea. And so I said, Dan, we're going to run our own pace, okay, bud? We'll just go a little slower, so don't try to keep up with everybody else. He said, okay. So as we're standing there at the front, the line, getting ready to go, there's an announcer. He's kind of talking about the race and when we're going to start, and okay, 1 minute to go. And Dan looks up and goes, hey, Dad, isn't that the guy from the news? I said, yeah, he's on Channel 11 News. He's the starter. He's going to, shoot the gun off when we start. He's like, oh, cool. And so the gun goes off, everybody takes off, and soon we are in the back of the pack. The only person that was running the same pace with us is a guy who's running backwards with a mirror. We're like, that's kind of cool. So he's running alongside us, and we're taking off. Pretty soon people are far ahead of us. We get about a mile into the race, and I look up, and there's a few guys who were really not prepared to run any kind of race. They probably haven't run since they were like in high school or something. And they're off on the side going, oh, Dan, just take a breath. And Dan goes, Dad, we're passing people. I'm excited. And so we keep going about halfway through. I looked down and said, how you doing? He said, I'm okay. I'm pretty tired. I don't think I'm going to finish the whole thing. I said, that's okay. We'll just go as far as you can. He said, okay. And so we keep running, and we don't see anybody in front of us at this point. The only person that's behind us is a guy on a bike that's sort of wrapping things up, and he keeps doing circles. So we're just trucking along, and we get to this point where Dan says, okay, Dad, I think I want to quit. And I said, all right, that's fine. I said, I tell you what, though. I said, you see that turn up there where the arrows are? He said, yeah. I said, as soon as we get to that turn, we're going to be back at the Southdale Mall where this thing started. I said, the last part of the race is all the way around the mall. I said, if we get to that point, that's where Mom's going to be with Grandma and Kelly, if you want to see them, and they can cheer for you. He said, okay, let's try to make it that far. Good job. And so we make the turn, and now we see 10,000 walkers getting ready to walk, and they're trying to keep the road clear because we haven't come through yet. And so we kind of, getting up there, we're looking for Mom and Aunt Kelly and Grandma, and all of a sudden, the guy from Channel 11 News comes running alongside Dan. He's like, hey, buddy, how you doing? I'm like, okay. He goes, what's your name? Dan Larson. And how old are you, Dan? I'm 8. And where are you from? I'm from Bloomington. The guy's like, why are they racing? He runs up, and I thought, how awesome was that? This guy would come up and just encourage him in that little way. And so as we go a few more steps, we're looking for Mom. All of a sudden, I hear over the loudspeakers the anchor from Channel 11 saying, hey everybody, let's bring around 8-year-old Dan Larson from Bloomington. All of a sudden, 10,000 people start cheering for Dan. They go, go Dan, come on buddy, you can do it. And cheer. And he's like, he is gone. All of a sudden, he just starts running. I keep up with him. He goes all the way around the wall. He finishes the race. He's jumping up and down the rooms over there crying. And he said, Dad, I could do that again. I go, I bet you could. Do you see the power of encouragement? Do you see how much more effective that is than criticism? I could have criticized him the whole way. You're going to quit now? What's the matter with you? But encouragement has power. So I want you to think about how often am I encouraging my husband? How often am I encouraging my children, the people around me that I love? Because criticism's a lot easier. It is. We have to be intentional about encouragement. Okay, the next one, the antidote to contempt is honor. Honor. It's very much like respect. That we just honor that person. We focus on them more than we focus on ourselves. We're thinking about their needs and their desires and their wants. How can we honor that person? One of my friends, I loved this. He said this one time. He said, my goal in life is to outserve my wife. What, man, talk about honoring. He's honoring her in that way. We honor people when we let them know how we feel. I have a friend who was speaking at a conference one time. He got done. He'd been really nervous about it. His wife happened to be there that weekend. And he got down and walked to the back. She wrapped her arms around him and she said, I am so proud of you. You knocked it out of the park. And he told me later as we were just talking, he said, man, she could have said, I love you, and I would have been, oh, okay, thanks, I love you too. But he said, when she said, I'm proud of you, he goes, man, my heart skipped a beat. It just meant so much to me. And guys want our wives to be proud of us. That's why we try to solve your problems all the time. Because we want you to go, thank you, I'm so proud you knew how to fix my problem. We do. So being proud is such a huge, huge thing. And also the way we honor each other is in the way we put our marriage in the proper perspective and the proper priority. We do this little survey at the beginning of our marriage retreat. We ask them to prioritize the things in their lives. And most couples that come on our retreat would, not all, but most of them will place their kids above their marriage. And I think that's a mixed up priority. I think we need to have our relationship, our marriage relationship, above our kids. And I know how hard it is, how often you spend your time looking down at your kids rather than up at your husband. Because we're so focused on them. And I know this is a season of life, and it might take more time, but our priority still needs to be with our spouse. I've done a lot of work with high school kids. I was doing a retreat one time with a group of about 80 high school kids. And we were in a room somewhat about this size. And we were talking about families and different things. And I played a little game with them called Continuums, where I would say, okay, if this is true, I want you to go to this side. If this is true, go to this side. So I'd say something like, okay, if you'd rather hold a snake, go to this side of the room. If you'd rather eat a spider, go to this side of the room. And they had to choose, okay, snake, spider, and they run back and forth. And so we were doing a number of these things. And I asked me this, I said, I want you to think about something you've dreamed about all your life, something you really, really want. And it could be anything. It could be a house. It could be that some person would, say yes and go out with you. It could be a car, whatever you want. Just think about it. So they all get it. And I said, if you could have that thing that you've been dreaming about, go down to this side. But if you could just know that your parents were passionately in love with each other, go to this side of the room. I was blown away when every single kid, 80 senior high school kids, went that way. See, more than anything else, they want their parents to be in love with each other. And I know that doesn't always happen, but it's an important thing for kids. So you can serve your kids so well by loving your spouse well. So that's honoring to each other. Okay, the next one, the antidote to withdrawal. To defensiveness. I went too far here. The antidote to defensiveness is humility. It's just recognizing who we are and who we are not. Recognizing that we will blow it. We will make mistakes. I get lazy, I get grumpy, I get selfish, and I need to say, you know what, I'm sorry. I need to own that stuff. I love the story of the prodigal son. He comes back, and he didn't come back and say, you know, Dad, this is all your fault. I would have never left had you been a better father. I would have never left had you not pushed me so hard. And he came back and said, you know what, this is on me. I own this. I blew it. And he's welcome back. So sometimes we just need to accept that we blow it, that we've made mistakes. One of the things I have, as I mentioned, 2 sons. We watch a lot of movies. My wife's not a big movie person. And it also means that we end up quoting a lot of movies. So we're always quoting stuff, and I was like, where are you getting this from? It's like, oh, that's from that movie. But I'm going to call it some movie lines. I want to see if you can get some of these. I'm going to make you an offer you can't refuse. Anybody? High five. Very good. Let's see. Houston, we have a problem. Oh, you're good. You had me at hello. She's like, oh. That's so good. I love that. Okay. Do you want to know the snowman? See, you want me to. Let's see. Hello, my name is Miguel Montoya. You're killing my father. You're my... This one's a little bit over. I don't know if you'll get this one. A little over. Love means never having to say you're sorry. Love story. Yes. Love means never having to say you're sorry. That is the stupidest line in any movie I've ever heard. And I'm not kidding you. When that movie came out, people would quote it for real. Well, you know, love means never having to say. Love means always having to say you're sorry. Okay? We're going to have to do it all the time. We have minor things, we have major things that happens all the time. I am constantly apologizing to my wife. I apologize when my wife was pregnant. I just would walk into her, I'm sorry, whatever I do. You know, it's just, it helps, okay? It's all my fault. No, but seriously, we're going to blow it sometimes, and we need to be able to apologize. We need to be able to come to each other and seek forgiveness, but we also need to grant forgiveness. And I know sometimes that's easy, sometimes it's not so easy. I had a friend one time, his son and my son played on the same soccer team together. We were sitting there one day, and he said, hey, want to grab lunch? I was like, sure. I didn't even know him that well. I was like, yeah, I'd grab lunch with you. So we went out for lunch one day, and we had a great lunch, and at the end of the lunch, he said, hey, I wanted to just share something with you. I don't share with many people. He said, you know, our marriage has suffered through an affair. I'm like, wow, okay. And we talked a little bit, and I didn't know who had the affair for about 3 minutes into this conversation. And when I finally figured out it was his wife that had the affair. And I said, it's interesting, I mean, that was 4 years ago, right? He said, yeah. I said, you guys are still together though? He said, we are. He said, in fact, we're better than we've ever been. He said, I love her more now than I ever have. And I went, okay, wait a minute, back up. What? Tell me what happened. He said, well, you know, it started out, I never felt like God was calling me out of this relationship. And so I met with my pastor, and he connected us with a great counselor. And we worked through all the things that we were really struggling with. He said, I owned a lot of that too. A lot of it was my own fault. And I was able to forgive her. And he said, the reason I'm telling you this is I know you go out and speak to couples and you do these retreats. And I just want to say, hey, there's hope. There's hope. Even when it gets so bad, there's hope. And so he said, share that. Tell people that. And I don't know if anybody's dealt with that, you've had that, but God's forgiveness is huge. And there is hope. And so I hope you can understand that humility and that forgiveness can be so huge. Okay, the next one is the antidote to withdrawal is connection. And part of this is just being really intentional about connecting, about being together. Connection is about intimacy, it's about closeness, it's about caring for each other, it's about warmth, affection, creating an environment where this can happen.
I'm not sure what you said.
Okay. I said creating an environment where love can happen. I think Sue is having a relationship problem. Oh my gosh. So, communication can be tough, can't it? You don't understand what you're trying to say. And it happens all the time. I had a phone call one time, this guy called up, he said, hey, I heard about your family retreat. I'm kind of interested. Could you tell me about it? I said, sure. And so I'm telling him a little about it, and he said, well, here's the problem. He said, you have to be honest with me if this is a problem. He said, I'm a dwarf. Would that be a problem? And I said, well, heavens no, that would be fine. We'd love to have you. And then I'm trying to think of ways that we can accommodate him. And I said, you know, if you need a step stool in your kitchen, we can do that. Or if you need lines back and forth, we can do that. And he said, okay. And we're talking about it. And then he said something that was really weird. He goes, this is sort of a recent thing. I was like, how do you become a recent word? I didn't say it, but I'm just like, and so I just kind of let it go, and we're talking, and he said, well, this is great. He said, it sounds like a lot of fun. I think we want to do it. He said, the only issue would be, I'm not sure at this point if it's my ex-wife's weekend with my son, or my weekend, and if it's her weekend, she might not let him come. And as soon as she said that, it hit me. He didn't say, I'm a dwarf. He said, I'm divorced, okay? And I'm working so hard to try to communicate with them and connect with them, and I just couldn't see communication can be so hard sometimes, okay? Ask Siri. Communication can be tough. I had a son who worked at a restaurant one time, and this older woman came in, and he was about to see her, and he said, would you like a booth or a table? And she looked, her eyes got big, she said, I would love a Lutheran table. Okay, Pastor, so over there, come on over there. No, it's just community, even non-verbal. One time he was at a Wendy's, he was telling me he was at a Wendy's, he's getting his food from the drive-thru, and the guy's kind of like, hey, you know, and so, what are you doing? You know, it kind of does like this talk, you know? So it's like, hey, the guy goes, no, dude, you're changed. Okay, so, communication can be so hard. Now, one of the things that Lynn and I have realized is, one of the reasons we struggle in communications is that we're different. Not only are our family systems different, she grew up with one sister, I have 13 brothers and sisters, okay? So in my family, everything was loud. In her family, everything was calm and quiet. Okay, but we have these differences. We also have the differences that I'm a man, she's a woman. God has wired us differently. We communicate differently. Researchers show that men speak 15 to 25,000 words per day. Women will speak 25 to 35,000. Or as I say to my wife, sometimes gusts up to 120. No, okay. But sometimes she's a high school math teacher. She'll sometimes come home and she'll say, I'm out of words. I've talked for 7 hours. I'm done. I'm like, I get it. So sometimes our roles switch around. But we're different in how we communicate. Men will often prefer shared experiences. Women prefer shared feelings. And I found this out one time this summer. Lynn was going on a little girls' weekend. It was kind of a fun little weekend to get away. And as she was getting ready to go, I was helping her load her stuff. She said, hey, can you go grab my golf clubs? I went, you guys are golfing? She said, yeah, we decided we're going to go golfing. And I said, awesome. And she told me the place they were playing. I said, that's what we always play. You're going to love it. And so I grabbed her golf clubs and I throw them in the car. And she loves golf. And so I was excited for her. And she goes on the trip. She comes back a little bit later on Sunday. I go out and helping her unload. I said, hey, what did you think of Turtleback? And she said, oh, we didn't play. I went, it was the most gorgeous weekend to play golf. I said, what do you mean you didn't play it? She said, well, we were sitting on the deck and we were talking and Shelly was sharing about her daughter. And we just forgot. We forgot we were playing golf. I'm like, okay, I don't understand that. Seriously, I would be like waking up going, okay, 7 hours till we're golfing. All right, count down. Because for her, they were about sharing feelings together. It was about connecting in that way. Now, she didn't understand me. I went on a fishing trip with one of my friends up to Canada. And we're up fishing for a week, and I get back, she said, how was your trip? I said, it was awesome. She said, oh, that's great. She said, how's Paul doing? Fine, I guess. She said, how does he like his new job? I'm like, I don't know. She said, you asked him about his job, didn't you? I'm like, no, I don't think I did. She looks at me, she goes, wait a minute. Let me get this straight. You were with this guy for a week in a boat, and you didn't ask him about his job? I'm like, it never came up. Okay. So she's like, I don't get it. You see, we're different, okay? I got as much out of it just having the experience as she did, the feelings, and we're just different. One of the things that's different, too, between men and women, the corpus callosum between the left brain and the right brain in men is much smaller than it is in women. Somebody told me once, for men it's like a one-way dirt road, just like really slow. And women it's like a 12-lane super highway. Where you're able to do things and multitask in ways that I can't. I mean, my wife, things are flying left brain, right brain. She can think of so many things. I remember one time she was sitting at the table correcting tasks. She had dinner on the oven, and tears are coming down her cheeks. I said, honey, what's wrong? She goes, I'm just thinking about my sister. I'm like, how is she do that? I'm thinking about one thing at a time. Seriously, have you ever come down to your husband who's watching TV and you're talking to him? And he goes, oh, what? Because you can only focus on the one thing at a time, all right? In fact, have you ever asked your husband, what are you thinking about? What does he sometimes say? Nothing. Listen, I'm going to tell you something. Research is showing, they've done studies on brainwave patterns. that it's possible for a guy to be thinking about nothing. I mean, there's enough brainwaves going just to keep their heart beating and their lungs going. Okay? We have the capacity to do that. We can shut things down. And sometimes that is a way for survival. Okay? And I think this was built in from years ago. That's why I read an article one time talking about how it's mostly men that will be firefighters and that sort of thing that can run into a burning building. I know there are women that do it, but men are able to, because of this thing they have in their brain, they can focus on the one task. They don't think about everything else. If my wife was running into a burning building, she'd be thinking about all the other things that she has to do in the relationships and different things like that. So it's not that these are bad things, but this is how we're wired. We have to understand that. Research has also shown, and you'll find this interesting, I think, it can take men 6 to 24 hours to identify a feeling. Have you ever asked your husband, what are you feeling? He's like, I don't know. Sometimes they just don't know. So my wife will come up, she'll say, what are you feeling? I'm like, I'm not quite sure. She said, all right, I'll check in later. And she'll check with me tomorrow. I'm like, yeah, I was pretty angry about it. Because I just didn't know. And most times, if she asks me what I feel, I'll tell her what I think. Because I don't know what I'm feeling. All right? So we're different. My wife actually, she coaches both boys and girls tennis. And she said it's really interesting. She said sometimes you'll get on the bus on the way home, and the bus will be absolutely quiet with the boys. The bus will be quiet with the boys if they've lost, because it's about results. All right? She said the girls could win, and it could still be quiet if they felt like the girl that they were playing didn't like them, because it's about relationships. And I think that's really interesting. So we're just different in how we do some of these things. Women will often share a problem to get feedback and to engage and connect. And guys want to solve it. We're like, okay, you're here because you want us to solve your problem. Guys will tend to only share the problem when they've exhausted every other resource. We're like, I'm out of ideas. And so they're coming to you saying, what should I do? And they're expecting that you have some sort of answer. So we have some different things like that. So we are different in how we communicate. But the goal of communication is still this. Every single person has a deep longing to be heard and to be understood. And as we understand and we communicate differently, as long as we know that we both have that need to be heard and understood, that is huge for us. And how we do that, to seek first to understand and then to be understood. Stephen Covey wrote a book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, on that part. I'll come back to that. And he said, seek first to understand, then to be understood. So often we try to have our thing be heard first and have other people understand us first. But if we really want to communicate well, we want to do this. And I was thinking about that love as a verb. I was speaking at a youth group one time, and I came down, and the whole wall, all the way across the wall, it said love is a verb. And I went, that is so right. Because most of the time we think of love as a noun. We think of that feeling of love. Oh, I'm in love. When we say we're in love, that's a noun. But what Jesus said is love one another as I have loved you. That's a verb. Serve one another as I have served you. Care for one another as I care for you. Listen to one another. These are all verbs, so we need to verb one another. That's so important. But when we listen to each other and we seek deep connection there, it changes everything. One of the things that I tell couples to do is try to begin with the end in mind. Where do you want to be? We're going to have conflicts in our relationships. We all have these conflicts. And we're going to go through those. Conflicts can be a great thing. They can help us in a lot of different ways. It can help us get better understanding of each other. It can help us develop closer intimacy with each other. And it can get rid of some of the toxicity that happens in a relationship. And so when we go into a conflict, we want to begin with the end in mind. Where do I want to be at the end of this conflict? What does my spouse need to see, hear, or feel to be able to get to the point that we both want to be? If we go into a conflict thinking, I'm going to win this one, you might win the battle, but you're going to lose the war. When you seek first to love that person, that changes everything. And so we want to get to a point where we get through those conflicts in a way that you both win. I have a friend one time, she said, I don't like to get in conflict with my husband because he always gets historical. He goes, I don't get hysterical. She said, no, you get historical. You start bringing up all the other things that we've been arguing about. He was like, yeah, I guess I do. And that's really true. And that's what happens when we don't resolve conflict. They will continue to come up. They just keep coming back up. There was a woman, her name was Bella Zagnarik. She was a Russian psychologist. And she noticed something when she was in grad school one time, when she was at a French restaurant, how these waiters would come up and take these complicated orders without writing anything down. They'd go back, 20 minutes later they'd bring out the orders and they'd put them down in front of the right person every time. And she thought that was fascinating. And as she got further into her career, she started studying that. And she was doing some work with different groups, and she went to these different restaurants that were able to do that. And she asked the question, she said, okay, after you put the dish down or whatever they ordered, how long do you remember that? And they said, well, not very long. She said, 10 minutes? No, I wouldn't know what they ordered 10 minutes later. And she figured out that what happened is, once they put the plate down, it was resolved. They didn't need to remember it, so their mind would let it go. When we don't resolve a problem, it will stay there, and we just keep bringing it up over and over. So that's why it's so important to go ahead and resolve conflict, to go into conflict and take care of it. Okay, so we want to assume or begin with the end in mind, and then this is a thing that I've really found helpful for our relationship, is assume good intent. So often, we just assume that people are out just for themselves. They're not really trying to help us. And so we assume bad intent. And if we do that, we're going to be wrong most of the time. Psychologist Emil Harker talks about this and how important it is to assume good intent in our relationships. And what he says is there's 3 principles about this. The first one is people want to feel good. The second one is people want others to feel good. And the third is people are doing the best that they can. If we go into our relationships and our conflicts assuming good intent, it will change everything. Let me give you an example. So let's say there's a couple, let's call Mark and Cheryl. Anybody named Mark and Cheryl? Okay, I don't want, okay. So Mark comes down, has breakfast, he's late, he runs out the door, he leaves his dishes on the counter. Cheryl comes down, she's like, okay, it's like the 4th day in a row. I cannot believe this. And so when Mark gets home, she's going to let him have it. All right? So Mark comes home and she's like, look, I am so sick of every time coming down and seeing the dishes on the counter. What do you think his response is going to be? Well, you might say, I left them on the counter. No, it's going to be defensiveness. Remember when we talked about that before? He's going to go, well, like you never leave your dishes on the counter? Come on. How about the car? I'm always cleaning out your garbage in the car. He's going to become defensive. But if she assumes good intent, what she does is she starts thinking, you know what? He wants to feel good. He wants me to feel good. And he's probably doing the best he can. And so she puts herself in his shoes and she starts thinking, you know, he's been working so hard at work. He's got that big project that's coming up and he's coaching our daughter's volleyball team after work and he's still doing that thing at church and, you know, I need to give him some grace and give him a little break. And so she puts the dishes away and you know, thinks, okay, this is good. Now, 2 things happen. First of all, Mark was not thinking about the dishes all day, and she was assuming bad intent. She would have been thinking about it all day, okay? So she would have paid the price. But by assuming good intent and just putting them away, it doesn't let Mark off the hook. She can still say something. She can say, you know what, when I got up this morning, I saw the dishes on the counter. At first I was kind of mad because, you know, the dishwasher's right there. But then I remember how hard you've been working. And you've been just going so hard and not getting much sleep, and so I just wanted to put them in the dishwasher. Now he's coming at it from a totally different perspective. He's like, oh, you know, I'm so sorry. I meant to put them away, and I ran upstairs to grab my keys, and I came down and just spaced it off, and you know, I'll try to do better. You see the difference as they come into those things. So assume good intent. Assume that people are doing the best they can. They want you to feel good. They want to feel good. The next part is when we're communicating, we want to have clear, direct, and sensitive communication. Sometimes we expect people to read our minds and understand what we're looking for. Have you ever had that happen? I remember just before the snows came this year, I was out raking the yard trying to get everything done because it was supposed to like start raining at night and then it was going to get cold and the snow's coming. So I knew I had all the stuff, leaves to rake and window wells to clean out and gutters and all this. And it's starting to get dark. And I remember I looked inside, I saw my wife sitting on the couch, and I said this, I said, I sure hope I can get all this done before the rains come, or before it gets dark. And she looked up, she said, yep. And she looked back. Okay, I was not clear at all. What I was really asking for was some help. But I just made a statement, and she just responded to the statement. So then I got kind of a little perturbed. I'm out there breaking. People have been down out here all day long. Nobody's offered to help. I can't believe it. And so I went from not being clear to insensitive. And I went in and I said, do you think you could get off of Facebook for 20 minutes and come on out here and help me? I mean, I've been out here all day long. Come on. And she looks up and she goes, excuse me? I was like, I need help. And we're kind of doing this little thing. She says, you know what I've been doing for the last 2 hours? I'm trying to figure out why our checkbook is overdrawn. There's something wrong with our, I'm like, oh. She said, do you want to start all over and try again? I go, yes, I would. And I knock on the door again and go, honey, I know you're really busy, but it's getting dark and it's going to rain and then the snows are coming. And I think I really need some help to get this done before, it starts raining. Do you think you could come out and help me for just a little bit? And then when I'm done, I'll come in and help you. I know you want to put sheets on the bed and that kind of thing. And she's like, good boy. All right, but there I used clear, direct, and sensitive communication with her. And we were able to do it right. So if we want to communicate well, we have to do that. Okay? All right, let's see. I just want to check timing-wise, how are we doing for time?
Maybe like 10, 15 minutes?
Okay, perfect. We're good. All right. The last couple things I want to share with you are this, is in your communication, keep it regular. Don't wait until you have problems to get together and talk. I would encourage you, as much as you're able to, is to schedule a date night for yourselves. Even if it doesn't mean you don't even need to go out on a date. Maybe you just put the kids to bed and you make a little dinner for yourselves. It doesn't need to be an expensive thing. But find time for each other. It's so important. I had some friends that went to a marriage counselor. They just were not connecting. And the marriage counselor said, it's going to cost you $125 to come and see me every week. That's what I charge. They said, I'm going to give you a different prescription. He said, I want you to go away for 2 months. And every week I want you to take that $125 and go on a date. And come back and see me in 2 months. They came back in 2 months and said, we're good. He said, I figured you would be. And they said, we didn't even need to spend $125. Sometimes we didn't spend a thing. He goes, yep, I knew that. Because he just knew that it had nothing connected. So do that regular connection. It's such an important thing. Find times, be intentional about communicating with each other. And then finally, endure. Endure. I love the quote from Winston Churchill. He said, never, never, never give in. Those 5 words turned everything around in London during the bombing of London. It gave people hope. Because, see, God has power to transform you. God has power to transform your spouse. Don't give up. I think couples give up way too soon. We think, it's painful. I think it's just time to end this. And I remember telling couples one time, if you went to a doctor and you said, my leg really hurts, and the doctor says, I can get rid of the pain, we'll just amputate. And you'd go, I think I might get a second opinion. I'm going to do anything I can to try and save the leg, even if it's painful right now. So never give up. Trust, as Pierre Teilhard de Chardin says, trust in the slow work of God. Sometimes God doesn't fix things right away. But God loves you. God loves your spouse. And He wants you to have the best marriage that you can. All right, I've talked enough. I'm going to stop there. But I'm going to give you some table questions just to chat about for a little bit and give some stuff to you. So the first question as we're passing these out is, what is something that struck you this morning? And one of the things that I find, sometimes God's speaking to you, not by what I say, but what you start thinking about as maybe I initiated something for you, you started thinking about it, and that's the thing that struck you. So we're kind of co-creating in this talk. So talk about something that struck you, and then there's some other questions. The last two questions you can skip because I didn't do that part. Sometimes I do, so you're good there, and that's it. Let me just pray for you, and then I'll do this as we go. Father, I just lift up this time as we share with one another about our relationships and our marriages, and I just thank you for the women in this room who are intentional about their marriages, and who are intentional about raising their kids, and just doing everything they can to just show that love that you have given to them, to their families. And we just ask you bless this time as they